Hello, 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 and welcome to another edition of the Apex to Asphalt. Today is Monday, May 4th. May the 4th be with you. Um, Daryl usually is the host, of course, but he is taking a temporary hiatus from the show as he and his fiance are finalizing some wedding plans. Then they're going to get married and begin their life as a married couple. I wouldn't rule out a surprise visit by Daryl for the Indy 500, but if we don't see him, we are obviously wishing Daryl and Miriam the best, and I look forward to traveling down to their wedding in early June. So in the off weeks when Daryl's not around, I'm going to be filling in as the host, and if I am not available because it is farming season, we've made accommodations with Larry B and Freddie, our NHRA and IndyCar specialist. They will be covering for us when we're not available. So you'll be in good hands. It's been 2 weeks since we've been on air. A lot has happened. I'm going to do the best I can to get through the NHRA today, NASCAR, Formula One, and the Monster Energy Supercross as well. If there's time, we'll go over some MotoGP at the end, but I don't think there's going to be just because of how much action there was in the past couple weeks. So we'll get started with the NHRA. Um, 2 weeks ago, we were the I apologize, the four wide nationals in Concord, North Carolina. And then this past weekend were the Southern Nationals in Georgia. In the four wide, your top fuel winner was Doug Coletta, your funny car Ron Capps, pro stock Matt Hartford, and pro stock motorcycle Gage Herrera. Um, there was a little bit of drama in the pit lane as Tony Schumacher's supercharger seized up just before the rain delay. A pretty massive argument ensued between crew chiefs on whether that team should be allowed to take that vehicle back to the garage and get that fixed. The NHRA ultimately said no, and it was a good case study for a rule book gray area. The They also Ford debuted the Mustang Cobra Jet 2200, which is the fastest electric car on the planet. It did a quarter mile in 6.869 seconds, which topped out at 222 miles, 0.36 miles per hour. And then Coletta also set the track record for a speed record for ZMAX Dragway with a 342.98 mile per hour run. That's fast. Um, Jumping to the Southern Nationals, which was just yesterday, in Top Fuel, Sean Langdon uh, won that. Jordan Vandergriff won Funny Car. Dallas Green won Pro Stock, and Matt Smith won Pro Stock Motorcycle. Um, Due to Langdon winning, he does overtake Coletta for the championship points lead in Top Fuel. Hartford um, and my apologies, not Hartford. Smith and Herrera, uh, good battle in the pro stock motorcycle, but it is ultimately Smith that gets the win. I think it will be a pretty fun championship this year. Would imagine if I had to put money on it, I would say Herrera is going to get it, but there are some good contenders in there who could really take it to him. And then I think what was my favorite moment of NHRI the last couple weeks is Jordan Vandergriff in just his fifth start with John Force Racing. He ends up winning, but I think really what really set it in was the celebration afterwards, which was a nod to his uncle, who is Bob Vandergriff Jr. Um, he ran from the finish line back to the starting line on his feet. Uncle Bob was there to greet him. Of course, that Bob Vandergriff, that was his celebration, was to run from the start or the finish line back to the start line. So pretty cool to see that in the family. And Jordan was quite emotional in the post race interview as well when he was just kind of talking about that and his career as a whole. So it was a really cool thing to see. Um, and I was hoping that Larry would be here, and he still could pop in at some point. But so in the Southern Nationals, Sean Langdon shattered the NHRA speed record with a 345.00 mile per hour run. That's the fastest run in drag racing history. So that kind of lended me to a question on whether 350 is possible. I think it is, but it's going to take the perfect storm of conditions to come together. You're going to need a track with a long shutdown area. So you're kind of looking at Gainesville, Georgia this past week. They got really nice long runoffs. You need the right air conditions, the right track conditions, and probably a crew chief that's willing to grenade the engine, because that's a lot of stress on that car and that engine. So there's a couple things that need to go into it really for that to work out. Up next is the Route 66 Nats. That's in 2 weeks on the weekend of May 16th and 17th. So looking forward to seeing that and just kind of how things develop. I'm wondering if Coletta can take back the championship points lead from Langdon. But those two are going to be a really fun championship to watch as this summer develops. So keep an eye on those two. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it come down to just a handful of points separating them at the end of the season. And then just kind of jumping back into the 350 club conversation. If we do see 350, it's definitely going to be on a Friday, in my opinion. And that's just because, qualifying is about the speed, but on Sunday when it counts, it's just all about consistency. You don't need to be putting up record shattering times and speeds to win. You just need to be consistent. So that's why if we do see 350, it's not going to become a norm, kind of like that 330, 340 is right now. I don't see that happening. So, but I do think it's possible that we could see it in the next couple of years. But again, it really would need to be the perfect storm in terms of conditions. So next up, we will hop over into NASCAR, and there's been a lot the last couple of weeks in NASCAR. Just looking at the results here, Truck Series, Carson Hocevar wins in Texas. In the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, Corey Day wins Talladega, Kyle Larson wins Texas. And in the Cup Series, Carson Hocevar wins Talladega, and Chase Elliott wins Texas. So we're going to jump back 2 weeks here. Tyler Reddick, just before Talladega, announced the signing of a multi-year extension with 23XI. His rumored salary is going to be about $9 million, which aligns him in a similar salary range as Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney. I do think that's fair, as Logano and Blaney have multiple championships, but I don't think that it would be fair to say that 23XI overpaid for Tyler Reddick, because 5 wins this season already. He's been running great. I think he finished 4th in Texas. So he's definitely having a career breakout year, and in my opinion, they might have locked him down for cheap, depending on just how dominant he can become. So overall, I think it's a good extension, assuming that $9 million's in the ballpark, and the deal is rumored through the 2029 season. So it would be a 3-year extension for 27, 28, and 29. But I think the biggest news before Talladega was the announcement that Jim France would be stepping down as the CEO of NASCAR. It was not unexpected, but the timing caught people off guard. And the reason I say that it wasn't unexpected is because the 23XI Front Row lawsuit, it just was not a good look for Jim. A lot of people believe that for the stability of the sport going forward, Jim would need to step down. And he's 82 years old. His memory recall's fading. It's not as good as it has been. And it really shined in testimony when Jim was talking. He was having trouble with remembering things, especially like contract specifics, stuff like that. So, again, so when I say it wasn't unexpected, that's what I mean. Just the timing was quite sudden. That said, Steve O'Donnell was named the new CEO, and he is the first person who is not a member of the France family to be at the helm of the series. Jim's great nephew, Ben Kennedy, takes over Steve's job as the chief operating officer, the COO, and that kind of is a signal that the France family is not stepping back from top tier management positions. They just didn't have the right person in family to take over that CEO role. Um, I think good news for NASCAR fans, though. Steve O'Donnell, in one of his first interviews, said the driver personalities need to shine through and be celebrated. He even went as far as saying the drivers should be someone who fans say, I'd like to have a beer with that guy or gal. And I think that's true. And I think that's true for a lot of NASCAR fans. We want to feel that the driver that we like is cool. We'd want to hang out with him, have a beer, or, do whatever. So that's absolutely true, and I hope that Steve finds a way to make that a reality because I do think, especially with Cletus McFarland showing how hungry NASCAR fans are for content off track, um, I think that Steve coming in and saying those is a really good sign when it comes to driver personalities going forward and kind of being a part of their lives. So basically, Steve just wants to let these drivers be drivers. And he actually loved Carson Hocevar's post race celebration at Talladega, which I don't think anybody didn't like that, to be honest with you. It could have been with the France family, it's not unlikely to say that that type of celebration would have been banned, where he's actually kind of crawled out of the car a little bit. But something like that, like Chili's, for example, the ROI that they have on that Hocevar sponsorship is through the roof. Everybody is talking about riding the Dente right now. Um, and really that celebration is the talk of the town, and Chili's is right there, full wrap on the car, riding the Dente. They're interacting with it on social media and promoting it. And it just really kind of echoes what I've just been saying about how um, you let these drivers be drivers, and the sponsors are going to get better ROI, and it's just going to be good for the sport. So, um, very optimistic seeing Steve's comments about letting these drivers just be drivers and shine through. Um, and then the last little bit of news, this came after Talladega Monday. Jim Pullman is out as Kyle Busch's crew chief. Andy Street is in. Now, Andy and Kyle have a little bit of experience together um, from, I believe it was the Truck Series. And so Pullman was let go. Well, he was reassigned within the organization. It was kind of quoted as a promotion, but um, so Kyle scored his first top 10 of the season at Talladega, new crew chief. And then because we didn't do the show last week, we didn't really have anything to compare it on, but now we do have numbers. So if we look at qualifying with Jim Pullman over the first 10 races, Kyle Busch averaged a starting position of 22.1. Kind of ironically, that was also his average finish position as well. But with Andy Street, he qualified sixth for Texas, which is um, a huge step forward, particularly on single lap speed. And his finish was 20th, but his estimated average running position throughout the race was 13.5. So that that P20 finish, I wouldn't say that that's fair, just because he was on kind of a little bit of an alternate pit strategy, and just with that last restart, he just kind of got shuffled back a little bit, and but he had restarted a little bit further ahead than he finished. And then because it's a week later, we did get to hear Kyle Busch's press conferences where he said he is happy with the direction that RCR is going, which is a far cry from when Darryl and I last spoke 2 weeks ago, where Kyle, I think it was the most at Bristol, where just Kyle and the team were just really chirping at each other on the radio, and there was a lot of tension there. So it's good to see that Kyle is kind of reinvested in RCR at this point, and that's got to be good for the organization because Kyle is kind of their golden knight there. So for as long as he's still there anyway. So, but let's talk about Carson Hocevar though, because he is having a career year in his now 11 Cup starts this season. He's got one win, three top tens, one win, three top threes, and four top tens, a pole position, and an average running position of 12. So that's I would be happy if that was my driver. Carson Hocevar is not my driver. Alex Bowman is, but I would take those numbers. I mean, Tyler Reddick fans wouldn't trade you right now, but 20, 30 some other drivers fans would. So really a great start to the year. And again, when you kind of pair that up with what I was saying about Steve O'Donnell saying let these drivers be drivers, and kind of talked about Chili's with the Ride the Dente. Carson Hocevar is just kind of having his career moment, on track, off track, and there is no better metric than I can think of than after his Talladega win, the Lionel Racing website crashed because of web traffic trying to pre-order his race win diecast. I don't think that that's happened for very many people. If I had to think off the top of my head, probably Chase Elliott's first win would be really probably the only time I could think of something so momentous happening on the Lionel Racing website. Maybe Chase's championship or Blaney's championship, something like that. But that level of web traffic to pre-order a diecast, a race win diecast, is very rare. And so Carson Hocevar doing that with his first win, he seems primed to take most popular driver from Chase Elliott. No one's been able to do it yet, but this could be Carson Hocevar's year, to take that back. So, speaking of Chase Elliott, though, he answers Carson Hocevar's win at Talladega with a win of his own in Texas, and the sirened for the second time this season. And this is basically Chase Elliott. We haven't really talked about him a lot in the last couple of years, but this could be a bit of a resurgence for him. And, the writing on the wall with the most popular driver, maybe he's finding an extra gear to get things going. And then lastly, we have Alex Bowman, who is my driver. He has 2 consecutive third place finishes, so he's gaining quite a bit of confidence after that month of vertigo. When he did come back, he did not have the best run of it in the couple tracks that they were at, but in Talladega and Texas, he certainly is on the rebound, and so we will see. Next up, I'm going to take a break here in just a few moments, but next up, NASCAR is headed to my home track, Watkins Glen, and right after this episode airs, I'm going to hit publish on an article that I wrote about why Watkins Glen should be given a timed endurance race similar to the Salem 6 hours at the Glen, or kind of any 6-hour endurance race. I make the case for why Watkins Glen should get one of those, what it could mean for NASCAR, kind of some rule tweaks, stuff like that. So as soon as this episode airs, I'm going to hit publish, and I would highly encourage you guys to read it. I hope that you like it and that you agree. But of course, I would love any discourse back on it, on if you think that another track would be a better pick. So, that being said, I am going to take a quick break. And when I come back, I will talk about Formula One. Well, we have some rule changes from the break, and then the Miami GP. Monster Energy Supercross comes back for the series finale. So we're going to move to outdoor here in a couple weeks and at the end of May. But we do have the final Supercross race this weekend in Salt Lake. The 250 classes, East and West, are both already settled, and the 450s are wide open. So we'll get you teed up for that. And then maybe there is time to go over some MotoGP. We'll see after I get that covered, but stick around. I will be right back after a word from some great companies that help us keep the lights on here at IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go. For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
All right, welcome back. And I assume that this is Nextel 68, which is a wonderful throwback to the Nextel Cup Series. It is Showtime Nextel. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And we're going to hop right into some Formula One. So before we get started with Miami, news broke that we are returning to Turkey. Istanbul is back on the grid with a 5-year deal starting in 2027. I talked to Darryl about this a couple days ago, and we are both very excited about this. Istanbul and the Turkish Grand Prix is a phenomenal race. We very much look forward to it. We are sad to see it go, but maybe Istanbul, as awesome as it is, maybe it's not the place we should be going next. Because Franco Colapinto did a demonstration run that drew over 500,000 Argentinians to Buenos Aires. Some people do put that number closer to 600,000, but either way, that attendance exceeds almost the record for almost every F1 race weekend, not just Sunday, but the weekend ever. The record goes to 1995 Australia, which had 520,000 people over the 3-day weekend. And then the only other race that exceeded 500,000 people over the course of the race weekend was Silverstone 2025. So, just based off of those numbers, the 500,000 to. Oh, it's Darryl. Darryl, I did not know that that was your YouTube. I must assume it is a reference to Nextel, or I'm going crazy, one of the two. But you are absolutely welcome, Darryl. I hope you have the best day of your life. It will be the fastest day of your life, without a doubt. And I am finalizing, just kind of making sure that I can make the drive down there to Maryland to be there. But I plan on being there. So, but anyways, Darryl, thank you so much for being here. And yep, he made it. I could tell. um, but yeah, so Franco Colapinto drew that 500 to 600,000 number crowd, and again, that would exceed the record for a F1 race weekend, whereas that was just a couple-hour run. So Colapinto drove a 2012 Lotus E20 along a temporary 2-kilometer street circuit through the Palermo district. And then Colapinto also ran a replica Mercedes W196, which is the iconic car that Fangio drove to 2 of his 5 world titles. And then we'll just kind of, 500,000 for an exhibition run that's 2 kilometers is mind-boggling. Again, considering that the record is 520,000 in Australia in 1995, and then the only thing that comes close is 2025 Silverstone with 500,000. So we all kind of know about the changes that took place for the Miami GP with qualifying and then in the race. They just kind of tweaked a little bit with the numbers, which Darryl can attest. I had been talking about it for weeks, if not probably the better part of 2 months before, that the quickest way to solve some of the bigger issues with this package, particularly super clipping, was going to be just a little adjustment with harvesting and deployment, which they ended up changing both. So they reduced the amount of charging, but they also changed the amount of deployment. So it wasn't just one quick shot. It was a little bit more drawn out. And I think that ultimately, I do think that the racing was better and the qualifying was better too. There was no super clipping. I waited for it. I watched for it. I think everybody was watching for it. And I personally didn't see it. If you saw any super clipping, please let me know in the comments, because I'd like to go back and check it out for myself. But I don't think we saw that super clipping where you're losing, 80, 100 kilometers down the backstretch. I saw, maybe 30 to 50. But yeah, like Darryl says, it was better, but we do need to go back to a high speed circuit to confirm that. That backstretch at Miami is a good a test for that. So that's a long stretch, and I think they managed it pretty well. So I think that especially the attitude on social media after the Miami GP, I think this was the first race this year so far that the chatter has been about the race itself and not about the rules package. So I am not a proponent of this rules package at all, but I think that Formula One probably did what they needed to do to change the conversation away. And because I'm a little bit of a nutcase, what I did was I ended up pulling the 2025 pole lap for Australia, China, Japan, and Miami, the 2026 pole lap, the time difference, and then the percent difference. So, because I just kind of wanted to go over these to kind of get an opinion on what you thought about qualifying. So, Australia, the 2026 pole time was 4.56% slower than the 2025 time. So Russell qualified a 118.5, and in 2025, Lando Norris qualified a 115.1. So the difference of 3.422 seconds. So 4.56, and that was the biggest difference. We're going to start tightening it up a little bit here. In China, 2025, Oscar Piastri qualifies a 1 minute 30.6 rounded down. And then in 2026, Kimi Antonelli qualifies a 132.1 rounded up. So that's a difference of 1.391 seconds. And 2026 was 1.57% slower. So they made up 2.99% between Australia and China compared to the previous year. Japan, a little bit of fall off. The difference was 2.06% slower. So Verstappen in 25 did a 1.269, and then Antonelli did a 1.287. So there was a time difference of just under 1.8 seconds. And then in Miami, where we do have changes. So there was a change in qualifying with deployment. So Miami in 2024 or 2025 was set by Max Verstappen with a 1.2 second pole time, and in 26, Kimi Antonelli does a 1.278. So the time difference is just under 1.6 seconds, and that's only 1.85% slower. So actually, it was the second best time this year compared to the previous year. So that gives me some hope, especially when you couple with the racing, which Darryl's definitely going to have a comment about Ferrari's strategy. I personally wasn't going to bring it up until I just did. But anyways, let's get into the actual race. The sprint race, I did not get the opportunity to watch. I was kind of off doing some other things, so I don't really want to talk about that because I didn't get to watch it. And Darryl just says about the the Ferrari strategy. So early chaos definitely shook up the running order, especially for this gentleman right up here. He had a pretty badass 360 spin, though, if I do say so. But Ferrari masters the start, and something Darryl texted me was that Ferrari should be nerfed for their starting. Absolutely not. There are 5 engine manufacturers, and 4 of them, Ferrari was the one who said, hey, these starts are going to be a problem, and the other 4 told him, sucks to suck, figure it out. Ferrari did figure it out, and the other guys didn't, and now the other guys are wanting some reprieve. Darryl says, yeah, that was a joke. Yeah, the joke's on everybody who told Ferrari no, because Ferrari, more or less, I don't want to say they designed their engine around it, but it is certainly their biggest strength. That and basically anywhere they need quick acceleration, we've talked about this at length before about how Ferrari chose to go with a smaller turbo, um, which reduces lag time, gives you a little bit quicker acceleration. So yeah, so they kind of designed their car around acceleration with that smaller turbo, and everybody else didn't, and that's kind of how it was. Red Bull debuted their Macarena wing, which has both been nicknamed the Max Arena wing, which I don't like, and also the rotisserie wing, which I might like less. And for what it's worth, I also hate the name Macarena wing too. I don't have a better option to call it, but just not those three. To, like, kind of, I don't know. I just don't like it. It's weird. But anyways, Red Bull had, as for the Red Bull fan in the house, the upgrades definitely gave me. Dara loves the rotisserie wing name. I also don't like rotisserie chicken though. Like those things you buy at the store that come in like a plastic bag full of a lifetime worth of PFAs and stuff. No, thank you. No rotisserie chickens for me. Um, but yeah, so Red Bull has their interpretation of the Macarena wing, which I'm going to actually pop onto the Red Bull content pool while I talk. Let's see how I do multitasking, because I'm going to try to get you a picture of that Macarena wing, the rotisserie wing, whatever you want to call it. Um, let's see here. I should be able to find one pretty easy. Apparently not. Apparently none of the Red Bull photographers wanted to take a picture of it. Oh, that is strange. Wow. They Red Bull is really good about putting photos in their content pool, and there is not one photo with that wing opened up. That is wild. They probably, well, the other teams have photographers though. Strange. Um, but okay, back to, so Red Bull is supposedly down to 6 or 7 um, kilograms overweight. They dropped about I think like 7 kilograms, which is giving them a lot of pace. Hadjar had a bad weekend. He clips the corner and separates his left front wheel from the car. Darryl and I kind of had a conversation about this on Sunday about just how the Red Bull second seat seems to be cursed. And um, Hadjar actually came out and just said he overdrove it and he was just feeling pressure to be competitive, and it just happened. And that's basically true for everyone that's been a teammate with Max. And I'm not, this is not a discussion about Max. This is just a discussion about his teammates. They all feel pressured to overdrive the car beyond what either their capabilities are or the car's capabilities are. Whereas I think Max just knows that perfect balance between overdrive and what the car will do. Um, and yeah, so it creates a lot of pressure on that second driver. So, but yeah, so Kimi Antonelli picks up yet another win. I think this is his. So Darryl says this keeps happening to the Red Bull second driver. They have to help settle that driver down, or they're going to keep being a one-car show. Darryl, I really wish you were on here because I know that you're going to laugh at this. But if you want to settle down the Red Bull second car, you just have Rick Hendrick give him a call and tell him to stop wrecking that car, because it worked for Ross Chastain beautifully. Chastain's like a neutered dog at this point. He will not put a foot out of line if he had to. So Kimi Antonelli picks up another win. This is, yep, I knew he'd like that. So Kimi Antonelli picks up another win, his third of the season, and this is kind of shaping up to be 2025, 2023. Picked virtually any years of the Mercedes era with Lewis there. This is just looking to be a dominant year. So, And when we get to Silverstone in a couple weeks, I believe we're going to Canada next. My apologies. In Canada, that is where they're coming with their big upgrade package. So we will see an upgrade out of Mercedes. I do have some information that when it comes to the Macarena wing, that Red Bull and Ferrari both submitted their designs for this with the FIA back in 2025. So this is not something that Red Bull saw on track and was like, hey, we're going to copy that. However, no other team did submit the plans for that wing. So I think it's very unlikely that we see other teams replicating this probably this season, but definitely not in the first half. A lot of their R&D budget for this year is already allocated, and that would be a really big thing to try to develop mid-year when you're already probably up against the cost cap, and you have to set aside money for repairs. So my guess is that they are going to roll some sort of update into their 2027 car. Probably the rest of the teams will switch to that Macarena, but for right now, it is going to be Ferrari and Red Bull probably being the only cars with that for this season. And then the last thing I have for Formula One before we jump into Monster Energy Supercross is some news that I think all fans have been waiting for, and that is that Formula One has confirmed that they will move to a V8 with a focus on sustainable fuels for the 2031 season. The new engine will feature a, quote, very, very minor electrification, end quote, with a Curve-style simplified hybrid. They don't have any real specifics other than the fact that this is going to be a internal combustion engine primary car with a little bit of electronics, but they're really focused on more of the sustainable fuel side of things at this point, just because a lot of the manufacturers are moving away from their desire to go full electrification, and they're moving towards more of a sustainable fuel for their future plans and their vehicles. So the expectation with this car is that they're going to reduce the weight by as much as 80 to 100 kilograms, which is 176 to 220 pounds. For reference, the current minimum weight is 798 kilograms or 1,760 pounds. So a reduction of 100 kilograms would be nearly 13% of the total car weight right now. Yeah, sustainable fuels is definitely a boardroom talk, but at the same time, the 50-50 electrification, 60-40, that's Formula One can't sustain that. That's just not going to be the future of the series. It can't be. Just not where we are now. And I agree, like, sustainable fuels, like, sure, do it, but this is Formula One. It should just be the best racing, and unfortunately, the best racing comes from dinosaurs, right? So just own what you are. NASCAR is doing it, and it's seeming to work for them to a degree. So just recognize what you are. Yeah, so we weren't ready for the 50-50. Absolutely right. And a big push for that 50-50 actually comes from Audi. So the next point is that if the power unit manufacturers agree, changes for the engine to a V8 could be as early as 2030. And what's going to happen is F1's going to leverage a lame duck season to get the majority, which is going to be they need a super majority of 4. It can't be 3. To move on to the V8 season early. They're not going to push it with 2029. It would just be way too soon. And especially Audi, is going to push back big time because the what drew them into the series is that 50-50 electrification. So if we move away from that, there's a chance that Audi doesn't stick around. And Darryl says the issue I have is that F1 is supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsport. Removing the electrification takes you off of that pinnacle. Darryl, I agree, and I think that that's a great conversation for us to have when you come back sometime in early July, I think, where and it's something that Darryl's kind of talked about quite a bit, is moving on to more of the like IMSA and WEC style hybrid system, because they have managed to incorporate hybrids at such a successful. It's just so successful. So yeah, I will write it down for the summer break episodes, Darryl. So anyways, so with Formula One, V8s are coming. It's just a matter of time. And then up next on Sunday, May 24th, we have the Canadian GP. Again, Mercedes is bringing their first big upgrade package of the season. Ferrari, Red Bull, and McLaren all seem to have closed the gap. I did not talk about Haas seemingly standing still, which is moving backwards. But we'll see what Mercedes has to say. And as far as the ADUO, actually, nobody's really even talking about the ADUO right now. But what we did see is over, I think, 2 weeks ago, engineers, people much more knowledgeable than I, started talking about how Ferrari, that little wing that they put on the back of the exhaust that shoots the exhaust up, and people thought that that was chasing a little bit of downforce, but we actually kind of have it on good authority now that they were actually trying to change the back pressure of the exhaust to kind of throttle their horsepower a little bit. A sneaky way to make their engine look less effective than it is, to try to get if they weren't already in the ADUO range, to get down into it. And then, of course, you saw this week at Miami, virtually every car up the grid that wasn't a Mercedes had some sort of restrictor on the exhaust. So it was pretty funny to see that. Some of them were blatant. Red Bull literally just welded a piece of iron right across the bottom quarter of the exhaust. Other teams did kind of similar to Ferrari, where they put that little flap on the back. So we'll see. ADUO is coming up. I think Canada is the race where we make that determination, because that would have been the 6th race of the season. So moving on from Formula One to the final week. This week is the Salt Lake City, the season finale of the Monster Energy Supercross Series. We will pick up with the Outdoor Motocross Series here towards the end of May, but right now we have an exciting finish to the 2026 Supercross season to talk about. So in the 250 class, last week in a rain-soaked Philadelphia, Cole Davies wins the race, and the Aussie clinches the 250 SX East Championship. His family had all flown in from Auckland to be there, so it was pretty awesome seeing that. But it was a muddy mess, and there are some people that like wet, muddy motocross, supercross, basically any type of like off-road racing. I don't like mud fests. I'm not really a big mud person, but yeah. So Cole Davies gets the win, and then he clinches the championship. Hayden Deegan obviously clinched the 250 West quite some time ago, and he is going to move to 450 for the outdoor season. But he's got one more 250 East-West showdown to live through. And with it being Hayden Deegan's last East-West showdown, I think those Yamaha Star Racing boys on the other side, um, Nate Thrasher, Cole Davies, Simonson. I think they're going to try to take it to Deacon and reclaim that title because they got one more shot at it. So we'll see who gets the win in Salt Lake. And we know that this is Hayden Deegan's final ride. And Darryl says, last chance for the 250 guys to take a win off Deegan. What a championship for Davies. We love a classic. Whoop riders here. Yep. Davies absolutely has made a name for himself this year, blitzing the whoops. Um, and Deegan is, I would say, arguably better everywhere else on the track. But this could potentially be in Supercross a final ride for Levi Kitchen and Joe Shimoda, who could potentially move up to 450s for the 2027 season. They will be running 250s the rest of this season, but both are really Levi Kitchen kind of has a plan to move from 250s to 450s depending on what happens with that seat for next year. Because I forget who's got the seat right now, but they're on a 1-year prove it deal. They didn't prove it in Supercross, so depending on what happens with the outdoor season, that 450 seat with Kawasaki could be opened up for Levi Kitchen. And then Joe Shimoda, similar thing. He could be moving up to 450s as well. And Darryl says he'd love to see Joe come up to the 450s. Absolutely. He's had a pretty tough go of it with his career. He's had a couple injuries that have held him back. And I think he probably would be in 450s by now if it wasn't for those accidents that seem to have been really unfortunate timing-wise. For 2027, what is not confirmed is whether Cole Davies will be moving up. It sounds like he is going to stay in 250s. He will be the heir apparent to Deegan's throne. But he has kind of said that he's going to use the 2027 season to prep for moving up in 2028. The bikes are a little bit heavier. The schedule's longer. There's a lot of training and prep that goes into that, and Cole Davies wants to take a full year to get ready for that. So he's won his championship, his 250 East Championship. He gets one more round. He gets one more championship before he is forced to move up to 450s. That's what happened to Valley a couple of years ago. He won a second, and then he ended up going to MXGP with Honda, where he's going to be for a couple of years. I doubt we'll see him back because winning a 450 in MXGP, him being a Frenchman, being back in Europe is something that he really has said is like kind of a career ambition for him. So, and then 450s, we have a title fight. Darryl and I have been talking about this since probably the 4th or 5th round of the season, that we thought this was going to run out to Salt Lake, and I'll be damned if it didn't. Hunter Lawrence has a 1-point lead over Ken Roxon. So whoever is the better finisher at Salt Lake, assuming they both finish in the points, wins the championship. If they crash out, Lawrence wins, but Ken Roxon does need to finish. Winner takes all is what this comes down to. Both of them have been on fire. Eli Tomac, unfortunately, had that injury. He did come back to a podium this past week, but he's out of the championship. Also, Cooper Webb is he was eliminated. He's 35 points back. You only get 25 points this weekend. So this championship is between Hunter Lawrence and Ken Roxon only. And I do have time because Salt Lake City is this Saturday, the East-West Showdown. You are not going to want to miss, but don't turn that TV off after the showdown because 450s is going to be amazing. As Darryl says, we've got a heads up. Drop that off. We got a heads up race for the championship in 450s, and Hunter Lawrence, that would be his moment to say, I'm here, if he can get that off Ken Roxon. So looking forward to that. I'm going to jump into MotoGP quick because there is a little bit to get to. I was hoping that I could wait and talk about this with Darryl, but I don't think that well, really, there's no news on it, but um, we do have some Yamaha driver news. I, as a Blue Crew, have been kind of really tracking the Yamaha as they moved into that. They've moved away from the inline four into a V4 for this season, which has not gone well for them. But so Alex Rins, this was before the Spanish GP 2 weekends ago. Alex Rins called Massimo Marigali, who is the Yamaha MotoGP team principal, and he basically said, "What's going on for next season? Um, I need to know, what's going on." Marigali confirmed to Rims, yeah, struggle bus for sure. We're not even going to talk about the struggle bus. We're just going to talk about the drivers. Um, so Marigali confirmed to Rins, "You're not part of our plans for next year." Unfortunately for Rins, his MotoGP career probably ends after this season. He had that injury back in 2023 that took him out for the season. He insists that he's fully recovered, but unfortunately for him, the only tape he has to put down to show other teams I still got it is on a Yamaha. So he's not doing his career any favors by being on that bike this year. I don't see anybody else signing him for next year, so um, we'll see where he goes, but it might be a career for Alex Rins in MotoGP. And yeah, literally the worst time to be on a prove it deal. Absolutely, Darryl. Being with Yamaha is not good right now. But they do have. It is rumored that they have their lineup already set and possibly signed, but not announced. And I'm going to go into that right now. So MotoGP is undergoing a process similar to F1's Concord Agreement. These behind-the-scenes negotiations are the basis for Yamaha not revealing their 2027 driver lineup so far. And it's that 2027 lineup, as I kind of alluded to, it's occupying that weird space in between rumor and confirmation. When the riders are ultimately announced, we're going to end up using one of those cliches, worst kept secret in the garage type of deals. But the teams are withholding information, particularly a driver announcement for 2027, because they're using it as leverage over Liberty Media, saying, we're prepared to not run next year and going forward. And so, if you're not familiar with the Concord Agreement, it's between Liberty Media, who owns the series, and the teams, with Formula One. So it just, there's way too much to get into, but it basically is the founding document, that the end all be all for the series and the promoters to reference and run the series based off of. It's their Magna Carta. And so recently, Liberty Media, who owns Formula One, took an ownership of 84% of MotoGP off of Dorna. Teams are negotiating with Liberty Media for their own version of a Concord Agreement. And there's three main talking points that this agreement is coming down to. Everything else is pretty well hammered out. And the teams want a percentage-based revenue sharing, whereas Liberty Media offered a lump sum of $9 million at the beginning of the season. That $9 million is good, and it would be a lump sum right at the beginning of the season to give them time to develop. However, we know what Liberty Media did for Formula One, and they do want to do this with MotoGP as well. So it would be in the team's best interest long-term to hold out to try to get revenue-based or percentage-based revenue sharing, which I agree with. I think that's absolutely hold out for that. And then the next talking point for the teams is currently they lease their grid spots in 5-year increments, and they want a permanent ownership of their position on the grid. So much like the Formula One, much like NASCAR with their charter system. Um, up, you know, a lot to say about the charter system in NASCAR, but they want ownership, and I think that Liberty Media is completely ready to concede on that one. Um, that one seems kind of easy because you've got the same manufacturers in there all the time, and they just want to have long term stability to be able to invest in. And so, what Liberty is saying to those first 2 points by the teams is sure, um, but it's going to cost you, and it's going to cost you more fan engagement. So, what Liberty wants, and no surprise, Daryl's gonna be shocked when I say this. They want a Drive to Survive style show, presumably on Netflix. That has been a great success for them. But they want riders to be their own brand, and that goes back to what I was saying about Steve O'Donnell with NASCAR, saying that their drivers need to be really at the forefront and become a household name. MotoGP wants that. Well, Liberty Media wants that for MotoGP as well. They want their drivers to be a household name. And my guess is if you go up to an average motorsports fan and ask them to name one MotoGP rider, on the off chance they could name anybody, and Darryl says Drive to Survive boosted F1 so much the team should give it a try. I agree. And I don't think that that would be a big issue. Um, I think it would be great. And I can't see why the teams would be against something like that just because it does boost your profile so much. We saw what it did for Formula One. Um, and precisely, Darryl, that's exactly what I was going to say. They're going to name Valentino Rossi, and he hasn't ridden in years, verbatim. Um, but again, a lot of them are going to name a guy who's retired. And so, again, I think Liberty is in the right and says you're getting a Drive to Survive style show. Riders really need to step up and be the face of the sport. And I think the really big contention is over the fan engagement portion. So I'm not entirely sure what it details, but they want like show bikes available to do like exhibitions and stuff at the race, which again, I'm not entirely sure what that entails, but the teams are concerned about the cost of having those extra bikes, and I'll do a little bit more research on it and come back to you with some better details on that. But the Drive to Survive show and riders stepping up and being their own brand, I don't see how that could possibly be a loss. And so so I guess if I had to summarize it, I'm going to say this. Liberty wants a F1 style entertainment product, and the manufacturers want F1 profits. And if they could use older bikes, maybe it could cut down on the cost for that. Maybe Liberty fits the bills for these. Yeah, I don't know exactly how it works. I know that there's some concessions. Particularly we're moving from 1,000cc to 850. They're also banning ride height mechanisms. So there's going to actually be a lot of changes coming for the 2027 rule package. And I think a lot of that is going to be tied up into the Concord agreement if they can get it signed. Now, what's supposed to be signed before Spain? It has not been signed yet. It's been a week and a day since Spain, so probably 2 weeks realistically when it was supposed to have been signed. So not really sure what the holdup was, but going into Spain, all the rumors were this thing's getting signed this week. All right. And Darryl, while you're here, coming into the closing of the show, I'm going to name my drivers of the week. I have one for last week because I wasn't here, and then also one for this week as well. Darryl, go ahead and give me your two, one for last week, one for this week. Last week, my driver of the week was Carson Hocevar. He picks up his first career win, and I think the fans spoke this. I don't think I had a choice in picking anybody except for Carson Hocevar, though Cole Davies was a close second for clinching his championship in a downpour in Philly. But the fans spoke when they crashed Lionel's website to pre-order that car. And it's still being talked about a week and a day later, his celebration at Talladega. For that reason, Carson Hocevar is my driver of the week for last week. And then cutting into this week is Sean Langdon, the Top Fuel driver. He set the record, the NHRA speed record on Friday in qualifying at 345.00, which is wild. Absolutely incredible. And then he followed it up on Sunday with the win. And like I said earlier in the show, in NHRA, speed, when you win on speed on Friday, you win on consistency on Sunday. And so Sean Langdon had the speed on Friday, and he followed it up with consistency on Sunday. And actually, this week, I didn't have anyone that could even come close, except for Darryl, who says that this week is Jordan Vandergriff for picking up his first win in the NHRA in Southern Georgia. And I have to agree, Carson is last week's driver of the week. Vandergriff, absolutely. First career win, like I said, with John Force Racing in his fifth start with the team. And talked about at length the celebration that his uncle made famous, Bob Vandergriff Jr., for running back to the start line from where he parked his car. And Uncle Bob, again, was there to greet him when he got back to the start line. So that was a really awesome, wholesome moment for the Vandergriffs. And Darryl, I have to agree with you about that. Vandergriff, a great pick. I just went with Langdon because of the 345 and the win. Darryl, 345 is wild. And Darryl, I think this is something that when you and Larry are on later this year, and I don't know if you were here earlier when I was talking about it, but we know about the 300 Club made famous in the 90s, particularly I think it was 92. Or you know what, it might have been 91. I know it was right before I was born. I was born in May of 92. So I think it was 92, but it could have been 91. When the 300 Club was finally broken, and then it was another couple months later, 300 was broken again. And it wasn't until 94 that 300 became a norm. The end of 94, when you basically had to go 300. And then it's been 300, like no one, as far as the next increment, 350, no one's touched 350. So I think it'd be fun with you and Larry to talk about whether 350 happens, and if you want to hear my thoughts on it, go back to the beginning of the episode when I talked about the NHRA. But anyways, with that being said, Darryl, love the homage to his uncle. Absolutely. Darryl says, I would love to see a push for the 350 Club, but I'm not sure the NHRA wants them to be at 350. I agree. That's verbatim. Maybe I didn't say that, but it was in my show notes that the NHRA is going to try to keep speed sub 340 if possible because of safety concerns. And again, it just comes to what I talked about earlier in the episode with having a long enough shutdown area. Gainesville's great for that. They have a nice long runoff area. South Georgia as well had a pretty good runoff. But there's going to be a lot of things that need to happen for 350. And precisely, Darryl, they are absolutely at the limit of what the tire can take. I did a lot of research into the possibility of getting to 350, and it does seem that it's possible we see it, but it will not become a norm, and the NHRA will regulate it down. They will put limiters down because they do want to keep it down into that 330, 340 range. or sub 340 is what I should say. They want to keep it sub 340. So, anyways, that is all I have for you guys tonight. Next week, hopefully, I'll be back. Well, no, actually, hopefully, I won't be because it is May 4th and we haven't even started tillage yet. We are 2 weeks behind, now going to be 3 weeks if we can get started next week. I hope it is Larry and Freddie here next week with you guys. Have a good night as well to you too, Darryl. So without extending this out longer than it needs to, I hope everybody has a great week. I will see you at some point. Yeah, take it easy and make sure you always brush your teeth before bed. My name is Christopher Lehman. This has been Apex to Asphalt on Monday, May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. And I will see you guys later. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Apex to Asphalt on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Good night.